So the last thing I want to do is obviously throw in the displacement. And the displacement, for the displacement, I want to grab our displacement texture, which I'm just going to copy the file path from our other shader, which is going to be right here in the texture path. Let's copy that. Let's throw down an RS texture. And let's paste this into the file name. There we go. And you'll notice that we're using the normal, and that's just a personal preference. I prefer the normal kind of detail. And so for this to work, we're going to need to throw down a displacement node. We're going to connect that right into the texture map. And since we're not using a kind of grayscale image, I'm going to change the displacement to a vector. And we're going to keep it in object space, and let's just connect this up to the displacement here. And obviously the last thing we're going to need to do is remap our values here. And I've found a value of 5, and 5 is what we're going to need. Looks pretty good as far as tiling is concerned. I'm not too concerned about having it the same tiling as the rock texture. I'm just trying to get something that looks good. So I'm just going to zoom in our camera here. I'm going to turn off the start stop IPR. And let's just kind of, well, you know what? I'm going to create a second camera to kind of zoom in. So I'm going to control click camera. We're in camera 2 now. I'm going to zoom in, kind of get something like this. All right. So now in our IPR, let's switch up. Well, we need to maybe reload this. We're going to need to switch up that camera. And in our camera parameters, just take a look. So we've also got a Redshift camera tab. And right now we're grabbing all the information from the Houdini camera projection. So we're going to grab all the information from here, which is fine. I just want to turn my near clipping down to 1 from that 400 there. I don't think it was a problem before. But essentially, we're grabbing all that information. That's fine. We're not going to use depth of field or anything. And finally, for displacement to actually work, we need to go into geometry, and under this Redshift OBJ tab, we need to go into displacement. This is where we can enable tessellation and displacement. So we need to turn on enable displacement for this to work. And also, we can turn on enable tessellation if we want to subdivide the geometry at render time. For this terrain mountain here, I'm not going to use it because we already have quite a bit of detail in the mesh. I don't want to subdivide it further, and I don't think we're going to need it, and it's going to just become a little bit more heavy. So I'm going to keep this off. So I didn't set a mark here. Let's go into the material. In here, I'm going to quick mark this, and a quick mark here, Control 2. So now we can kind of jump back and forth. So, all right, we've enabled displacement on the geometry, and we've got our normal texture hooked up. We've got it hooked up, and we're using a vector map encoding. Finally, I'm going to increase the displacement just by value of 2, I'm just going to increase the scale by 2, and we've hooked that up to the displacement tab here. All right, let's go in to our Redshift render view. Let's change our camera to camera 2. Now it's automatically loading up the geometry and displacing it. I want to actually stop the IPR and just manually put in our camera 2. And also, there we go. So now I'm just going to start the IPR. All right, so here we go. So this looks pretty great. We've got the displacement working, and we've got a rock texture. And also, if we just kind of go in and select this freeze tessellation here, we're going to freeze all tessellation and the displacement in that, so we can kind of move around the scene. So if we select this, now we can kind of move around the scene, and we're not going to have to calculate the displacement all the time. We're still going to need to reload, but we're not going to have to calculate the displacement. Okay, so here we're getting an error that, and this is what I was talking about before. We should just be able to scroll around and view our image, but now it's doing some weird kind of issue here, and now we're going to have to refresh our IPR, which is kind of a hassle because now we're going to have to recalculate the displacement again. So let's just kind of refresh this. There we go. So it finally refreshed, and it's definitely pretty annoying because that took a couple of minutes to refresh here. So that's one thing to keep note of. But anyways, we see that we got displacement even on our sand, and that's pretty good. So that's going to be it for our RS terrain there. In the next lesson, we're going to start setting up all our trees.